Okay. All right. So my name's Mary Grebner. I'm part of the endorsement research team. This is Emily. How do you pronounce your last name?
Leddige.
Oh my God, I was so wrong so many times. All right, Leddige, and you're running for District 5 position
Correct.
in the Olympia School Board.
Correct.
So, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. And thank you for returning a questionnaire that I read several times and thought you did a bang up job on. Um, so I would like to let you have like a few minutes to talk about yourself and, maybe revisit like the high points of why you're running or, the things you care about, the things you prioritize, that kind of stuff. And then we can get into a few additional questions.
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to run because I felt that there just happened to be an opportunity that presented itself. There were the two open seats. One of them happens to be in the district that I'm living in. And then I've always kind of wanted to give back more to my community. I've been a strong advocate for individuals, just generally speaking, and then individuals with intellectual disabilities or students with IEPs, things like that. I've wanted to expand, just how I can help and make our kids and our futures better. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to do that. I wanted to run school board. It's not uh, a super daunting task, but it's also daunting in its own way. So I thought I could start small and build from there and kind of see where this path takes me. I'm pretty passionate about education generally. I want everyone to be educated. I think education provides tools and resources for individuals, and just having a conversation with people, if you don't have this tools in your toolkit, it makes it difficult. So there can be misunderstandings, things like that, and I see disparity, um, kind of just generally across the board and during my regular job and just kind of out in the community. So I thought, starting with our students, because I think we always say, kids are our future, and I take that to heart. So I wanted to run on a campaign that focuses on inclusivity, efficiency, accessibility, transparency, and accountability. But at the heart of it all, I want to meet students where they're at. Students with IEPs, students without IEPs, students with behavioral plans and without behavioral plans. I want to meet them where they're at, where they are, and provide them those resources and tools so that they can better their lives and their futures. I'm a strong advocate for self-advocacy as well. So I think providing resources and tools and solutions for individuals and giving them those opportunities is a great way to start. And I think schools are in the best position to do that. I also think that there are a lot of changes going on in the world right now, that we're all aware of, no matter what your views are. There's just a lot of changes going on. And I think there's always that like overarching global perspective or federal perspective, then state and then local. And I think we don't always feel the pressures from the national level, um, at the local level, but this is something right now I think we are feeling those pressures. We have been for a while, especially with budget cuts and program cuts, just period. But just things that are diminishing as time is progressing. And I think this is a great opportunity to start in the local arena to help our local community grow and blossom while we're seeing this national big change as well. It does eventually have that, I don't want to use trickle down, but that trickle down effect. And I would hope that I can have that opportunity to help fight against any negative changes for our students, because I do believe they are our future. And if we pull our resources, even if they're limited, in pool our resources into our students, they will have a chance in the future to continue to succeed.
Oh, well, put myself back off mute. Okay, so that was super consistent with your questionnaire because on your questionnaire you talked a lot about inclusivity and you talked a lot about the kids with the differences and trying to make sure that everybody's kind of got level start. One of the things that I thought was interesting in your questionnaire and what you just said, when you're talking about like program cuts and stuff like that, I know like the Olympia School Board had a big contentious, oh my God, we might have to close schools, and there was this whole conversation around small local schools and defensiveness about that. And when I was researching for school board, I learned about disparity between schools, and your questionnaire talked about that. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with that? I know you said you've got your eldest sibling in your family, so you've gone
Right.
through the education system yourself and had siblings go through it, and you're also a mom, right? And I don't know if your
Yes.
child is in school yet or not, but so you have some experience with this, presumably, and understanding that there's disparity between schools in the district. And do you have any thoughts about like how that came to be or how you might address it or anything like that?
Yes, I will be completely transparent. I've only been in the Olympia area for about a year. I'm from Spokane. Well, I guess I grew up up north in Bothell, but most of my time was in Spokane. So my schooling and my siblings' schooling are through Spokane's public schools. But I think overall, just different sections of like where the school is located with the people who live there, there's just the funding issue, or I know a lot of the funding comes from property taxes. There's just different areas that are more affluent or less affluent. And I think that plays into it. From my year here being in Olympia, I've noticed that certain schools are really active with, I don't want to say community outreach necessarily, but open to the community events. I know that the Garfield has a lot of touch a truck events hosted at their school, but not, I don't hear a lot of other open to public, those kind of events at other schools. My kiddo does go to school. He's at McLean, and they do a lot of like in-house events. So I know that the fire department and lots of officers, and there was even career day recently. Lots of people came for that, but it was more in school, not as widely open. And I think just those differences, although those are both great separate opportunities, it really provides a kind of a divide between the two schools, even though they're just a few minutes away from each other. But the differences in the experiences, I think, play a key role in just how people are seeing things or getting exposed to things. And I think that if I'm able to, I want to be able to bridge some of those gaps and help maybe not make it a rule. I don't want to rule like that, have a rule, but make it in a way that we want the community to be invested, even people who don't have children. They're voters, they're a part of this community still, and they're not sending their kids to school or they're already out of school. So I think having those open access to things like that is really important. And that's kind of what I was thinking when I was answering those questions. It wasn't necessarily, well, the funding, I think, is always something to be worried about.
Mhm.
But I was thinking more of just the opportunities, since that's where I'm coming from
Mhm.
with my platform, is enhancing opportunities for individuals. Obviously, with the money, less affluent places have different funding and resources, and that plays a big key into it too.
What do you So some of the questions on the questionnaires were about laws, whether it's about transgender athletes and the WIAA or whether it's about, I'm going to get the number wrong, HB 2331. And we just had, sort of that initiative that came on the ballot last year, and then the governor just signed what is lauded as a rewrite of the Parental Bill of Rights. Do you have any, I mean, you're a lawyer, you're trained as a lawyer, so you understand these things probably better than most. And what are your thoughts about, sort of like complying with the law, even if you don't necessarily, agree with it 100%, and how the school board director sort of walks that line?
Sure. I actually talk about this a lot when I'm picking juries for trials. And I actually ask them, and because they're all community members, and I ask them, like, if there is a law and you disagree with it, how does that basically square up with you? So not only in that arena, but just personally, I think we all have our own ethics and our own morals. And at the core of everything, you have to be able to square it up with yourself. Now, I'm not saying, crazy people
Mhm.
um, can square that up, but just generally speaking, I guess from a more positive point of view, everyone needs to be okay with how they act and interact with others. And so I think at the core, number one, each member of the board needs to be okay with themselves first. But then secondly, they also need to follow the rules and follow the laws that are in place because those are in place for a reason. And whether that reason is positive, negative, or just confusing, they're there for right now, the way they are. Can laws and rules be changed? Of course. And I would very much strongly encourage people to do those things, take those chances to change the law. We have seen through our history in the United States so many changes for good, for bad, whatever. But you got to take that first step. But the first step is they are there for a reason, and there are ways to combat the laws rather than just, throwing your hands up and saying, oh, well, there are ways to do it in a more correct way, I guess. And so I would hope as a director of the school board that I can talk to my fellow colleagues, we can come to a consensus, but all obviously still need to follow the laws of the state because that's what the laws are right now.
Mhm. So one of my other questions is about, and this is because of things I've been reading lately, the whole national conversation around artificial intelligence and what it's doing to education. And I'm not, in my research, I didn't really find a lot that the Olympia School District necessarily had on the books in terms of, is it okay to use? Is it not okay to use? Like, what do we think about it generally? Like, is it going to be a boon to, or are students going to cheat, or do teachers have to figure out a whole different way of grading, or where do you come down on that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think um, just for consistency, but I also believe it, obviously. But I think for consistency, it's a tool, it's a resource, but things can become a crutch. And a prime example is just general technology and computers. We're on a computer right now. Just think of how it could have been even 10 years ago. Not that saying I would not love to meet you face to face in person, but how much easier is our lives because we can do an interview on Zoom. We have this technology. It might not be perfect, but we have it and it's capable and meets our needs for the most part. So I think a lot of it in COVID was a really big eye opener for technology because a lot of people got sent home. A lot of people are working from home. And then in the schools, we were conducting schooling through Zoom. And just the fact that that technology exists and we have it is amazing. I think it's beautiful. I'm a huge fan of technology. I may feel like I'm getting a little older now with technology, but I was just told my iPhone yesterday was 2 years old, and I didn't even realize it. So I think AI in general is something that there's not a lot of research on. I think your statement that I couldn't really find anything is completely accurate because that's how the world is right now. It's so new. And then from my law aspect, people are asking like, well, do lawyers use AI? I think they do. I don't think they should rely on it heavily. You should always obviously fact check, and I think that's what's important. I've used AI to help brainstorm and come up with ideas. I use it as a friend. I think ChatGPT is the biggest one out there. I think Microsoft came out with Copilot.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's a great way to help, not be your answer. And I think if there's a way to teach students kind of how we do online safety or social media safety, right? Social media wasn't really big a few years ago, and then COVID happened, and then TikTok and all this stuff. So I think just bringing that awareness, the tools, the resources, and training on it is just so helpful. I don't know how teachers are really going to combat the grading aspect because it is really hard to figure it out. There's a few tells. I've Googled it myself because I was curious. I was like,
Mhm.
how do teachers know what ChatGPT is being used? Sometimes sometimes there's like a little bit of a tell, but most of the time you can't tell. And at least my dabbling in it just for fun, ChatGPT can like help use your tone and your personality in your writing the more you work with it. And I think that's kind of the point of AI. So it can really meld with you, but I think, submitting, like let's say you have to write an essay on the American Revolution. I think just saying, here, write my essay, I think that's ridiculous.
Mhm.
But using it to be like, okay, I'm trying to come up with this theme of blah, blah, blah. Can you help me formulate something? And then I would hope as I would use it, you edit it line by line to make sure it's what you want. Because I mean, from my lawyer aspect, if I used it in my job, I'm certifying under penalty of perjury. Obviously, students aren't doing that, but they're turning their homework in for a grade. You should be authenticating your work. So I think if there's a way that we can come up with some training or AI safety, I don't even know. Um, I do worry about how it's still kind of big, but with AI and artists, and there a lot of it's not copyright infringement yet, but there's a lot of that going on. That's a whole different ballgame. And I do think people should be adequately compensated for their work, and people should not steal other people's work.
Hmm.
So for that part, I would hope students don't use AI and just copy, paste, and hope it's okay.
Hmm.
Um, but I think teaching and training would help with that. I don't know if we could start that maybe in fifth. I don't know where the right line is, maybe fifth grade.
Hmm.
My kiddo's in second grade, almost in third grade, and is told me something about a
Younger.
Chromebook, and I was like, oh, I didn't know you knew that. He said something about like clearing the browser history or something, and I was like, oh, you know that? Okay, cool. So it just depends on where it starts, but I think because social media technology is so immersed in our youth right now, it's a great time to teach and have those safety talks.
And where do you think, I think this ties in a little bit with your emphasis in your questionnaire. You had a lot of emphasis about transparency and communication and being accountable to the community that you represent. And so, like, how do you see in your head, whether it's on AI or, developing like a policy for an entirely new sort of area that hasn't been covered before? Or whether it's, dealing with a contentious budget issue or whatever, like what are your thoughts about how accessible the school board director can be to the community, how the school board director reaches out to the community to maybe educate or, start some kind of um, I don't know, it struck me as I was researching the school board about the muddy kind of role between teachers and parents, because that whole conversation around AI is also largely ethical, but
Right.
learning where you're gonna like, is that really your work? Like, did you really learn from that exercise? And where's the lines? And so it seems like the community has to work together. So how does the school board director sort of make that happen and make that be transparent and participatory for all the members?
Yeah, so I think having I don't know, open sessions or open houses or place like public comment forums, like a town hall almost on certain things, especially if we are going to come up with a policy. I think specifically with AI, because it is so, I won't use touchy, but it's such a touchy, finite type of topic. It's so a nano topic, I guess.
Mhm.
And I think having input on that, because you're right, the board of directors is very much that tie, that the glue between the parents and the teachers. I wouldn't say a middleman, but just to help with that fluidity between the two. Because of course, there's a lot of parents who are like, "No, my kid needs to learn this, that, and the other," and the teachers are like, "But this is my curriculum." And so I think having that opportunity to provide commentary or comments on those big kind of topics, even just budget type issues, is really important. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to be effectuated. Um, I know there's a lot of people who claim they have interest in attending all these things and then they don't, then they get mad. But again, that's on them. They should have attended if they were that interested and they had something to say. Um, I think there's a lot of trolls on the internet, maybe, um, even just local school politics. But maybe if it's not an open forum, or maybe it's an open forum plus a time to have someone watch the forum later and then have a comment time period
Mhm.
that people could do on their own time rather than like dedicating time to this public event that
Mhm.
might be accessible. There's a lot of people who have multiple jobs or their kids have multiple activities, so it's hard to attend something physically, but maybe on their own time at 2 a.m. when they're waiting for something, they can watch it and they make a comment. So I think if we can allow a way to have as much input as possible while being completely upfront, the board of directors are the ones who are implementing this, but your comments, your concerns are taken seriously. That's where I would come from. I want to know what your problem is or what the teacher's problem is before I make a decision, because you guys or the parents would be the boots on the ground. They're seeing it all the time. The teachers are in the classroom. I'm not in the classroom. I only have one aspect of it. So I would hope that there's a way to meld it and I'm done. Besides an open forum like open house, I haven't really seen
Hmm.
another vision in my mind yet.
And why did you move to Olympia?
We decided we wanted to get back to the west side. My partner has family over here. Most of my family's in Spokane. But for my career, it didn't really matter. I just wanted to stay in the state of Washington. And
Mhm.
then we were looking at places that had a really good school district. And so we landed in Olympia. And most of what I'm saying about making the schools work for the children, with the children. It's not that Olympia is lacking at all, in my opinion. I just want to make it better. I want to enhance it. I want to keep doing what we're doing and make it awesome. And so when we picked to come over to the West Side, we did look at places that for my job specifically where there were openings. But then I was like, well, we got a kiddo. We need to figure out where we're going. And so we just kind of plopped in Olympia, and it's been a great experience here, and I don't really want to leave if I don't have to. But there was no big issue leaving or anything. It just was like, let's just try it. Let's just see. And then we looked at all the schools and we landed in Olympia, and that's just kind of
Mhm.
where we are at.
And what do you think I should have asked you that I didn't? This can be your sort of wrap up if you want to like take the whole time.
Sure. That's always so hard because I always think of like, what did I forget to say? I don't know. I think you asked and covered a lot of stuff. I feel very passionate and dedicated for this position. Win or lose, that's not going to change how I want to be a member of the community, and I want that known. Um, I think everyone can do their own part, right? Just do your part, start small. And this is just such a bigger scheme of like bigger, I don't know why scheme, but bigger scheme of things rather than on the small scale.
Mhm.
And I think, just because I'm trying to do this doesn't mean that my changes or my hopes and dreams will, shift in any way. Just then it will just scale back to being a more personal, be on smaller boards or be on PTOs or things like that, or, maybe have more presence at town halls or things like that. Um, but I think overall, I think you asked all the questions that I was anticipating you'd ask, but I think I don't know. I think it's very important that we have people who care on the school board. Sometimes I've seen elections where people are like, "Oh, that person's running. I got to run against them." I don't know if that's the feel of this particular one. It just happens to be for my position that I'm running for. Three people decided to run, and then on for the other one, same thing. Three people decided to run. I think if we were in a different school district, it might have been a different feel. But I do think that my passion for this is something that this position alone wouldn't, change on that front.
And how do you plan on, because you're a mom and you have a job, like how do you plan on balancing all of this, especially if you're going to do, sort of more outreach and that to the community. It all takes time. How do
It
you
does.
how do you keep sanity amongst all of that?
So scheduling, I'm kind of a type A person. Most lawyers are. And I think just having dedicated time, just personally, I've been working on boundaries for the last few years, and work is work, home is home. I don't like the term work-life balance. It is a life balance. But work and home balance is really important to me. Sometimes my job can be very demanding, and I do have to work weekends or nights or overtime, so to speak. But I'm very clear up front. I think that's where my transparency comes from. I'm very clear, hey, I've got to do this, or it's going to be from these hours to these hours. And then if I'm not as, productive, I need to say, I communicate with the family like, hey, I can't do this. But if we have something big planned on the weekend, I try to make sure that I'm available for that. Unless it's something that like can't be, changed or whatever. I think there was some event like a couple weeks ago and it was on a weekend, but I also did some like campaign stuff on the back end. But I always put, family first and myself and trying to be a well-rounded, healthy person. And then, balancing work with if I'm on the school board, I would have to, if it's things during like my business operating hours, I would have to take leave to make it very clear that I'm not working my job and doing the school board. And I think that's very important to have those distinct lines. I have the leave. My job is pretty flexible, except for a couple restrictions. But as long as I communicate with my bosses and it's approved, that part shouldn't be a problem. I know a lot of the school board meetings are after work hours anyway, so that part won't be too big of a deal. Um, but it's just trying to kind of compartmentalize each part of my life, but like blend it together. At least that's my goal. We're all human and we all make mistakes, but I think the focus is always, family first and me, and then the rest of my life as well.
And my last question, I'm sorry, I said I didn't have questions, but do you think,
That's okay.
there's that whole period in a person's life, I think it's from 20 to 40, or maybe it's 25 to 45, where they're raising their kids or they're like super focused on their career. And um, I want to thank you very much for running. It's a hard decision to decide to step up and put yourself out there and make statements and present, fundraise, all that stuff. So thank you for running. And I wonder, as the last thing, like, do you think the fact that you are in that category where you're actively raising a kid and actively working on your career can maybe help you identify a little bit more with the parents of that you'll be representing and the people in the community who are also in that space as they deal with the school district?
I think so. I always would look to individuals when I was a little younger in the voting scale, to see like, do they have a family? Do they look the way that I would think a school board member would? I do think a lot of people can have great input from all aspects of their life. Their people's worldviews are so vastly different, and their upbringings really influence a lot, and just kind of how they interact with the world. But I do think that where I'm at, particularly in my life, in my career and family, I do think it will help because I can see it from a parent's point of view. And my kid is, going into third grade, so he's got his whole school career ahead of him. And so I think that's really helpful, especially because I can know the lingo of the schools. Um, I think people with either older kids, they kind of forget, or, people without kids in school, they forget that lingo. They forget, what does IEP mean? Or what does it mean to, like most of the people before COVID didn't realize there were laptops in schools for a long time.
Hmm.
Chromebooks just became the normal. Once COVID happened. So I remember when I was in school myself having a laptop, different rules at the time, but the technology and all that stuff has been there, but I didn't remember that until I was a parent. So
Hmm.
I think just having that relatable experience is really helpful. And a lot of parents are in that boat where they're juggling a lot of things at once. So the reality and the realism I hope to bring will be something that is understandable, and then I can relate and they can relate to me.
Okay, last call. Anything else you want to say? I'm just going to say thank you again.
No, I have nothing else. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks. Have a great rest of the beautiful Sunday. And
Thank you.
thanks for on a weekend especially.
Well, it did work out with my schedule best, but I appreciate you guys being flexible with me, and I hope you guys enjoy your weekend as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.